Aloha and good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:03 p.m. on Thursday, August 24th, 2023, and I call the Committee on Public Safety meeting to order. I'd like to welcome Council Members Dos Santos Tam and Tupola here. We'd like to excuse Committee Vice Chair Toba and also welcome Council Chair Waters. Pursuant to Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways: in person in the council chamber and remotely via video conference or phone. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name for the record and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify in person will be called upon first. When I call your name, please proceed to the podium, press the on-off button at the base of the microphone, and begin by stating your name. When the timer goes off, please conclude your remarks promptly. Persons who did not register will be given an opportunity to testify following the registered testifiers. Once in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to remote testimony and call upon the registered testifiers first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. Begin by stating your name. For those who are testifying by telephone only, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please listen for the prompt to unmute and press *6. For persons standing by remotely who did not register to testify, please utilize the Zoom raise hand button or press *9 on your telephone to indicate your desire to speak. Some friendly reminders and tips: video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are also watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires that all votes at remote meetings be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. Members, please note that we posted an agenda addendum that I added a third item to the agenda, Resolution 23-194. I will be taking this item out of order before item number 2. We'd like to also welcome Committee Vice Chair, Councilmember Talba. So item number 1, Resolution 23-164, relating to the construction of a sanitary sewerage system in the Eva District to be known and hereafter designated as Eva Beach Sewers Section 4 in accordance with the Improvement by Assessment Ordinance and to comply with Act 125, Session Laws of Hawaii 2017, which established a requirement for the conversion of all cesspools in the state to wastewater management systems by January 2015. And with us today, we have from the Department of Environmental Services, Director Roger Babcock. Aloha, Director Babcock.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Roger Babcock, Director, Department of Environmental Services. Before we get started, I want to remind you that the toilets are not a trash can, and flushable wipes are not really flushable. So don't flush them. They clog our sewer system and our pumps and our various equipment. Fats, oils, and grease should be collected and then put in with the refuse where they can go to H-Power and be fuel to make electricity. Thanks. I'm happy to answer any questions, if you'd like me to go through the presentation we went through before, I could do that, or answer any questions about.
Mahalo, Director Babcock.
resolution.
If you don't mind, I know that you came in the previous month to give this presentation, but some of the committee members were not present for that. So if it's okay, members who were not here, would you prefer that he go through it again, or is the handout sufficient for you?
Not a presentation at the neighborhood board, so handout is okay for me. For me.
The handout is okay.
Okay, great, thank you. So members, at this time, if we can go into the questions and discussion. Yes, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Director. Thank you for your PSA at the beginning. Super
Aloha.
important. I wonder if someone hasn't, like, sued for flushable wipes being called flushable when they're not. Just saying, it's a very big problem. So thank you guys for handling that. So a few questions for you, because we have, 196 homes that we're talking about right here. Has there been already any communication from the department to the 196 homes?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And just to clarify, there's 970 some.
Sorry,
Nine-
976.
Yeah, 976 homes. No, so far, there hasn't been discussion with the residents. The process of establishing a sewer improvement district is a fairly long one, and we're in the first step now, which is essentially proposing it to City Council. And so it's called basically a resolution of intent to plan for sewering a new area. The city hasn't done any new sewering in several decades, so this creation of a sewer improvement district is a process. It's a long process. There are quite a few steps. Public involved in talking to the public and the neighborhood and the folks involved is in the process. But we essentially request authorization to proceed with planning and sort of identifying the scope of the project from council before we take any further actions. So that's where we're at today, step one.
Understood. I see the timeline. Thank you. My other question is in regards to, because this timeline basically leads up into possible proceed with construction in 2025, and then from there, the homeowner is being required to connect. In a rough estimate, how much does a cesspool to septic tank conversion cost for a individual resident?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first I would just say that it is a fairly variable, potentially a highly variable number, depends on the site conditions, meaning the distance from the house, whether there are obstructions like trees or paved areas or perhaps rock walls or other things that need obstructions that need to be either removed and rebuilt and all that kind of stuff. So the cost could be fairly variable. I would say, though, that in a best case situation, I can give you some numbers for that. But just so that you know, basically the things that have to happen once a sewer becomes available, the pipes will be put into the street. The sewer mains will be roughly in the middle of the road. Laterals are the pipe that connects the main sewer up to the house. The city would install all of those components, including the laterals, up to essentially to the property line. And then the rest is on private property. So the private property owner's responsibilities are to get a building permit for the sewer lateral, which does involve a permit application, which would be done by an engineer, has to be done by a licensed engineer, has to prepare a drawing and submit that as part of the permit process. And so there are some costs associated with that. And then once a permit's obtained, a contractor would be hired to dig a trench and properly build the sewer lateral connection connecting the house to the sewer lateral stub out in the street. In addition, they need to properly close the cesspool, which means backfilling it appropriately, compacting it, and then including a layer of concrete, which prevents the unit from being used in the future. So that's called proper closure, and that's covered in the plumbing code, how that stuff is all done. So a rough estimate of the cost to get the building permit and do design is $2,000 to $3,000. The construction cost estimate for filling a cesspool, about $4,000. And the installation of a lateral, these type of work would cost generally between $50 to $75 per foot for the contractor. So it's going to depend on the length. So if it's 50 feet to or more, then it could be $2,500 to $3,500 for that component. And again, that particular one would be sort of a best case scenario where there really wasn't anything in the way or stuff like that. So you add those things together, it's between $8,500 and $10,000.
But the actual septic tank itself, right? Because you'd actually have to get that, what you're connecting up into. What is the cost for that? You're talking about the connector from the sewage line into the property, right?
Yeah, so in this case, what happens is these all have cesspools. So the cesspools will be abandoned. That means filled in and filled with concrete. And then a sewer lateral will be connected from the house to the street. So there will be no more cesspool or septic tank or any other on-site treatment system. So now all the sewage will be going into the city system. And in this case, it will be going to the pump to the Honolulu wastewater.
So your estimate per resident would be around 10,000, give or take?
Correct.
So I guess my next question is, are you familiar with the CPACE that we talked about in the housing committee just like the other week? It is like a resilience climate type of loan that's been approved by the city that we are authorized to use.
Sorry, I didn't hear about that.
It's okay. I had approached them because part of what they do is help with infrastructure costs and loans. Because my question is, in the event that a homeowner doesn't have the money to front this, the 10,000 or however much, say they need additional assistance, they need to maybe take out a loan or maybe do something else, this possible avenue, I talked to them for 2 hours to see if this conversion that we're talking about right here could be applied to what they do, and they said yes. So I see that the timeline is kind of, lengthened out to maybe if we follow this timeline, they would have to connect up in 2027. But in the event that they can't drop 10 grand and they need to get a loan or they need to get assistance, we need to also figure out if they'll qualify, how much they'll qualify for, are those payments going to be divvied out? So part of the CPACE loan is that they actually tack it onto your property tax. So I asked them if they would work with you to possibly put it on the wastewater bill, because that's how they're doing it right now, is they're putting it on the bill, but they still are paid separately. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that even though it seems to be some years out, it's still a lot to ask, seeing as though we're discussing Board of Water Supply increases in the fees. We have other, extraneous circumstances that many homeowners may not be prepared to do right then in 2027. So that's why I asked about the communication, is if you're communicated this late in the game, I don't know how many people at that point would be able to, but say we have this lead out, right? It's 2023. We have this lead out and we have a longer conversation about what a financing tool looks like, what it is. There may be a way forward, but that is my concern about us moving forward without having these discussions about loan options, financing options, and then the community knowing what's going to be afforded to them in what amount of time so that they can plan accordingly. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Council Member. And we're in total agreement. We will be doing public outreach and as well as trying to facilitate making the connections with these various options, right? Because there was various things like that related to cesspool closure at the state ledge. Many of them didn't. None of them actually passed the past session. However, I'm pretty sure those will be reintroduced, and there's going to be some other tools and mechanisms becoming available. So we are very much keyed into that and involved. So, and that's important. And so in addition, there are, because this is a whole neighborhood and not individual, retrofits that are all spread out, there's some real opportunities for some economies of scale with contracting. So we will be, trying to assist as time goes on to be able to help facilitate some of that stuff.
Sorry, just one more comment. That's what I was going to say, is that if they're approached ahead of time, people can do it together as opposed to one-off, because many people, especially if they're older in age, won't be able to handle all of this, the permit application, the trenching, hiring a company. So I think those steps moving forward are going to be really important. Sorry, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tupola. Okay, good. Okay, any other questions from the members? Oh, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you. I think we might have covered this in a previous meeting, but if somebody in this area or any other area that's planned to be part of a sewer improvement district takes their cesspool on their own and improves it to a septic system on their own, are they going to be expected to also contribute to this district-wide sewerage improvement, even though they already have an approved septic system?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. It's a good question. But it also did remind me one thing, that there's also, in addition to what we talked about for the connection and the upgrade, there's also an assessment, which is also as part of ordinance. And it's 25 cents, I believe, per square foot of lot area. So for an average 5,000 square foot lot, it is about $1,250. So that's a kind of a connection fee. But with respect to your question, yes, there could be some folks who have upgraded, have closed their cesspool and have upgraded to an approved system. For example, a septic tank and leach field or an aerobic treatment unit. Ordinance provides, earlier council in past years anticipated this and provided relief. And the way it works is a homeowner that lets the city know that they have an approved system, and then sewer fees are waived for a period of 25 years. So the owner does still have to connect and close their system. However, because of, to offset the expense that they made for that system, council decided to amend ordinance a number of years ago to provide 25 years of relief for sewer fees. In addition, it also waives the connection fee, the assessment. The way it's written is that it gives that 25 years of relief unless the property is sold. Once the property is sold, sewer fees for the new owner begin immediately. The idea being that whatever the sunk costs were sunk by the previous owner. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Babcock. I had one question before we move on. Have you guys, has the department or the administration looked into alternatives to this sewer system? And if so, have you, and if not, why not? And do you have an estimate of how much it would cost to do an alternative?
Thanks for the question. So, in general, unsewered areas with on-site systems are thought by the EPA and the Department of Health to be substandard treatment systems, or temporary until centralized sewer systems with sophisticated treatment plants that meet all of the EPA and state requirements for treatment and disposal until those are available. So sewering is generally the goal for connecting all properties and businesses, in the United States. So it's considered the highest and best way to deal with our waste. So that generally we try to sewer where it's cost effective. But we will not be sewering everywhere because it is not necessarily cost effective in all cases. As was mentioned last time, there's about 8,250 cesspools, on the island. They all need to be upgraded, as you mentioned, by 2050, according to state law. But not all of those will be getting sewers from the county. Probably about a quarter of them we may sewer. But anyway, to answer the other part of your question, the estimated cost for this project for almost 1,000 cesspools eliminated is $50 million construction cost. So it works out to about $50,000 per property. In terms of other alternatives, really the only other alternative would be to have a decentralized system. It would still require the collection system pipes and then maybe have a small treatment plant in the area. But that would cost much more than just connecting to our existing sewers in the area and having it go to Honolulu treatment plant. And so what we're in the business of doing is sewering as opposed to doing something else on site, which is private property. So putting an acceptable system like a septic tank and a leach field or something like that, that would all be the private owner's responsibility. And that would cost them more than the closure and connection to the city system.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, so if we don't do this sewerage system here, it then becomes on the property owner to do it themselves, which would end up being more expensive for them. Is that what I heard correct? Is that what you're
Yeah, that's correct. And they do have time, though. They have until 2050 to comply with the state law. But it would cost them more than $10,000 to develop their own system.
That's if we don't go ahead with this current project as planned.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Oh, yes, Council. I'd like to welcome Councilmember, Floor Leader Cordero to the chamber, and Councilmember Tolba.
Thank you. Director, if and when the resolution passes, what will be the next steps for the department, and will the public be able to weigh in and as you gather the data and the study?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So basically, the next step is that ENV, the department, we would be giving you what's called a preliminary report, a preliminary engineering report that evaluates the project, gives estimated costs, shows the layout and stuff like that. And then actually, so during that, well, I guess it depends on how long that takes. Generally, there would be that could happen fairly quickly. We could give you that report, and then we would continue working on on the plans, and then let's see. Well, actually, wait. Once you receive the preliminary report, then that gets referred to committee. And so that it would be a hearing and more things that would happen. And of course, even this resolution has to have 3 readings, right? And then there would be essentially then adopting a resolution approving the preliminary report, and it sets a date for a public hearing. Then there would be neighborhood board meetings, and we'd be presenting the project to all the affected neighborhood boards. Then the council holds a public hearing, and then would receive a resolution to essentially create the sewer improvement district and define it. Then let's see. Then, assuming that gets approved, then it goes to we would then finish. We'd do a final report, prepare plans and drawings. That then also has to come back and get approved. Assuming that all gets approved, then eventually we go out and, for a contractor and stuff like that.
Awesome. I think it's important because the area that we're looking at is Older Ever Beach.
Yep.
So a lot of them live on fixed income, and give us and the senator who's in the chamber an opportunity to address our neighborhood, educate, so that they can make the right assessment. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Members, any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Tupola.
A follow-up on the cesspool to septic. So the cesspool to septic conversion, that one, there is the waiver for the connection fee that you don't need to pay, and then the 25 years you don't need to pay the wastewater. For this one, does the 25 years of not paying wastewater also apply?
For which one, Councilmember?
What we're talking about right now, for the 976 homes, does this hookup into this sewage district also allow them to access the 25 years of not paying wastewater fees?
No, they would be paying wastewater fees as soon as they're connected to the system. The waiver of the fees is to offset
Right, because if
yeah.
you do the cesspool to septic, it's like 30 to 50,000.
Right.
So you guys are trying to offset the cost of that. So what I'm saying though is part of the analysis that needs to be afforded to the community, aside from everything you outlined with assessment, laterals, permit, and trenching, is what it would feel like to pay a wastewater bill, because they haven't, right? So what does
Yes.
that look like monthly? Do you have the income? To Councilmember Tolba's point, these are things that also need to be shared with the community so that it's not just, oh, I paid the $12,000, I'm good. Like, nope, you're gonna have actually a bigger water bill than you're used to. It's gonna have a wastewater fee on top of it. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that I think it would be reasonable to let the, community know ahead of time, so that it's not an after the fact thing, because in the economy that we're living in right now, very stressful. Don't want to stress out people any more than they already are with the type of fees and things that the city is charging or that they might need to charge in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So we will, as part of our public outreach in our meetings, it's easy to calculate what the sewer bill will be based on any resident's water bill,
Okay,
because they're directly proportional.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members? Nope. Okay. Mahalo, Director Babcock.
Thank you.
We will not proceed with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerk says, is there anyone registered or unregistered who is here in the council chamber to testify on this item?
Chair, yes, we have.
Aloha, Senator Favela. If you could come to the podium, please press the on-off button at the base of the microphone and begin by stating your name.
Kurt Fivella, Eva Beach resident. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. But I had a testimony, but I'm gonna show my way. I'll tell you why. If you guys don't listen to what this guy is cooking, you can smell him. This study is just to say confirmation that they're gonna do them. If the study is not gonna show in favor of my community, he already said the EPA is gonna close the septic tanks. So what about the communities on the neighbor islands and the places that you guys are not gonna go? You guys are trying to sell me something. Listen to this, guys. Sell me something that is not true. You guys don't have no proof, even if you do this study, to show that cesspools is causing harm to the environment and the community and the people that live there for over 50 years. They've tricked us on Puakapuna and Ikolani Street. But man, we will get smart real quick. I like what Councilwoman Tupola said. The waiver for those other guys, 25 years, but give those guys, because 25 years from now, most of those people are gonna be dead. They cannot and will not be able to pay any more monthly anything. Not the 10 grand. Even if we pay the 10 grand, they're not gonna afford it, because you know how I know? My sewer fees is 3 times more than on my water bill. So think about this, council. It's already a pandemic box that they're gonna do it anyway. And they're gonna do it into my community. So as the director of this council chair, where else has cesspools that they are considering? And why did they choose Eva Beach? You know why they did? I get you the answer. Because it's easier. It's not gonna cost $50 million. I don't know who's giving him the numbers.
Thank you, Senator Favela. And I understand, and I'm thankful for those of you who have gone back to the community and got the input that you were seeking. And I think something that was discussed in the previous meeting was the fact that a lot of this is stemming from the state mandate that was placed upon the city. And so I just want to always make that clear, that had it not been for that, we wouldn't be sitting here having to discuss this at this time. Yes, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, if you would like to.
Yeah, actually, I have a question based on Senator Favela's testimony that I'd like to ask the director if he can come back up. Senator Favela sort of brings up that there's other areas like this. It's not just Eva Beach. What are some of the other areas, and have we started to do planning and outreach to them? I guess what I'm hearing is, some of this is coming as a surprise to the community. And I want to make sure that no other community is surprised in that way.
Yeah, sure. So the Department of Environmental Services has to do a lot of long-range planning and evaluation of our system. And, you know, basically the entire sewage system is organized into basins, right? So we have the Sand Island Basin, right, which is Metro Honolulu. We have the Honolulu Basin, which does include Eva Beach area, most of which is sewered. And then we have 9 treatment plants that are all basins. There are lots of folks that are not in any of those basins, all the North Shore, for example, and a few other areas. So over the years, studies have been done in several other areas, and we actually have a total of potential where sewers could be brought in for a little over 2,400 cesspools. That's island-wide. So some of the locations are, one is Aiea Heights, in addition to Eva Beach, Kahaluu sewers. There's actually two different sections in Kahaluu. There's one in Kailua, Waimanalo. There's some in Cam Highway, which is in, that's also in Kahaluu, actually. And then another area, yeah, actually those are all the areas where we actually already have some studies that have been done, at least looking at where the cesspools are located in relation to our existing infrastructure and where it might make sense to do connections. Those, you know, haven't been programmed yet. You know, they haven't gotten as far along as Eva Beach. The Eva Beach is kind of a ideal location in the sense that it's flat, it's very near large existing infrastructure, and there's improved streets and small slopes and relatively easy construction. So yeah. So we would go through the same process, council member, for any of those other projects.
Okay, good. I appreciate that information. I think kind of what we're hearing is projects like this take a lot of community input. And so, you know, as we come into other areas, I'm thinking of, in my district, kind of along the rim of Punch Bowl, there's that pocket of homes that are sole serviced by cesspools. I know there's a big area in Makiki, Upper Makiki Street, where there's still in cesspools. So I want to make sure that we have very robust outreach well in advance so everyone understands there's no surprises.
Thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Members, did you have any questions for the testifier or for Director Babcock? Okay. Thank you.
I'll ask a quick question, please.
Okay.
Oh, so you mentioned briefly that there may be a amendment proposed on the state side. What do you think the likelihood is of amending the law?
See, this is what I was just hearing about the EPA and all of these agencies that is going to come down and say what they say. But they don't live in my community. I want EPA to come live in my community. He doesn't name all these areas that have money, maybe except Waimanalo. Think about it. You know why you guys starting? It's convenient. So I just do what you're saying is that going forward, yeah, my community, even if they come against it, you guys going forward. So I'm going to do what Kelvin says to do, so that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to ask him, and even you, Chair, whoever was there at the time when this bill was passed. See, this was working on this, council members, let me tell you guys this. 2017, when it was made, they came to my community. Guess who was chair? Oh, it was me. And guess what? We told them to shove it. But they still continue to work. You heard him?
So what do you think the likelihood is of passing legislation to amend it?
Well, I'm going to talk to my colleagues. And then what I'm going to do first is I'm going to tell them to start in Kailua. If they want to start this, start it in Kailua. And then we work in Eva Beach, because by the time they get to Eva Beach, majority of those guys could be secondary The kids who have money that probably gonna move into homes when they inherit it from their parents, maybe they can afford it. But right now, the 25 years you're talking about, nobody gonna be there. So they should start the 25 years in Kailua.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Councilmember
So,
Tola.
Director, Senator Favela is saying that we might not need, do we need this? Do we need this connection, or are we just doing it because of a state law that was put in place? Like, say, for instance, right,
Yeah.
the community, and we've been enough community neighborhood boards to know that the people in Ever neighborhood is not, not really for it. So, can you answer that question? And then, again, I guess it's Senator Favela's moving forward next, but is it necessary?
Yeah, that's a great question. The department has over 2,000 miles of sewer system, a bunch of pump stations and treatment plants. We have plenty to do. We don't really need more sewers. There is, the state law does not require us to sewer these folks or anyone else, or to eliminate cesspools. That is the responsibility of the property owner.
Awesome, great question. There you go, Senator Favela, go get them.
Yeah, thank you guys. And again, I'll let you know, sir and council members, our neighborhood board, Ever Beach, is ineffective. Ineffective. They let this slip through the wires and other things because you guys did the presentation. I was in the hospital because if I was there, it wouldn't have went good. But they are sleeping on the wheel. You know why? None of those board members live in that community. Ayo.
Mahalo. I had a follow-up question, Dr. Babcock, just to repeat. So if I heard you say correctly, because I asked earlier if you had looked into alternative sites, and you mentioned that you hadn't, and you gave the reasons earlier for why this is a prime site. So you said right now that the city is not required to do this, but the properties themselves will eventually have to get off of the cesspool and transfer to the sewage system. So whether we as a city do this or not, the homeowners will have that responsibility. And from what you said earlier, if it's not done this way, where it's about a $10,000 expenditure on the homeowner's part, if we don't do that and the onus goes on to the homeowner completely, then that price tag will then increase. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so this is a lower cost alternative for the homeowners, at least for the initial construction. But if owners do their own system and somehow finance that, they would then not have a sewer fee. They wouldn't be connected to the sewer system, and they wouldn't have a sewer fee.
But regardless, it has to be done because of the mandate placed upon us by the state.
Correct,
Is that
unless
correct?
unless the law is state law is changed or amended or rescinded. Yep.
Thank you, Director Babcock. I'd like to welcome Councilmember Wire to the chamber. Okay, seeing no other further questions from the council. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Wire.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, Director, are there other areas, and I know you've talked about this before, but could you just outline other areas that could use or in need of sewer infrastructure?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Council Member. There are about 8,200 estimated, best guess from Department of Health, 8,250 cesspools still on Oahu, 88,000 statewide. Most of them are on Big Island. But here we have a few. This project is almost 1,000 cesspools, about an eighth, I guess, of the total. We have looked into several other districts, Aiea Heights, in addition to Ewa Beach, several areas of Kahului and Kailua and Waimanalo, where we have looked at the potential for connecting a total of about 2,400 cesspools, they would eliminate 2,400 cesspools by bringing sewers to neighborhoods where It's in relatively close proximity to our existing infrastructure. So it would make sense, at least spatially, to connect those folks to our system.
I appreciate that. Are you looking at the same structure for that implementation of that infrastructure, specifically an improvement district? Or
Yes, they would be sewer improvement districts. So that is the way that it needs to happen. The city needs to decide that this is going to be a sewer improvement district, and then that's essentially how the city compels folks to connect and join the system, is by instituting a sewer improvement district. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think Councilmember Tupola brought up some really good points about the PACE or PACER program. And so I'm just curious, I know you mentioned you weren't super familiar with it, but I'm sure you'll learn a little bit more. And just understanding that the legislature did authorize commercial use of the funds, but took out the residential component. It may be useful, maybe not necessarily you, but MDO's office, to engage the legislature. And also Senator Favela, because I know he's here, because like Councilmember Tupola mentioned, it's a financing mechanism that allows for longer terms and lower rates because it's taking first priority above the mortgage, right? And lenders, even lenders that hold that mortgage can give out those PACER loans.
Yep.
And so in a sense, I think financial institutions have a benefit there because they're still maintaining priority on the financing, but it'll help all these folks, particularly District 2, District 3, that need to do these conversions to septic. Of course, unless Senator is able to get the law amended, but I'm not going to put that on you. But I know you're definitely advocating, but appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Councilmember Tupola.
Yeah, and just for clarification, when I met with the guys at CPACE, which, thank you, Councilmember Wire, for introducing that, there is a way around the commercial component. They are going to allow it to be on ag lands per their resiliency part of the grant. So even though, like, you didn't mention my district, and I already know why, is because it's scattered throughout where we have cesspools, and we don't have, like, this concentrated area. That's probably why we're not being considered for this. But also, we were able to consider, they said that they would use the CPACE grant for buildings, which we were talking about for sprinklers. So there is some ways around it that we could still use it. But I mean, to the point that you made that we don't need it now, the whole thing that I'm saying and why I would suggest the outreach now instead of after the assessment is because it's real simple. All you have to do is ask people. So like if you ask people and say, oh, hey, this is what's in front of us. These are the costs, lay out what the options are. This is what a septic tank conversion looks like to cesspool, around 30 to 50 grand. And that's it. I think when there's less coercion, you use the word, not me. I think that there's more willing partnerships, but I think when people find out after the fact that they're forced into a decision they never knew about, that they never made, that's where a lot of resentment comes, And I do think that even serving as we do the outreach to the ages, the income levels, that'll help us to make a better decision on the timing. Because as you stated, we have till 2050, right? So even if we were able to pull this out over time to kind of make better plans on the financing, there may be something afforded to us just by talking with the neighborhood and figuring out kind of what looks better for them as far as because really it does just come down to financing. And if the law states that, to be honest, there is no penalty. So I don't know what the state is going to do when 8,800, cesspools don't convert. They still have yet to figure that out on their end, right? And that's not on us. They came up with the law, no penalty. You have nothing to do when people have no money to convert it. So I think taking the steps forward, saying, hey, we'll help out with these things. What do you guys think? We may get a lot of willing participants on the way we approach it, as opposed to this forceful way, which was given to us from the state. Here's the date. This is what we're doing. You guys have to do it by that time. That's when you get a lot of people that are adverse to it. So just some thoughts. Thank you, Director.
Yeah, those thoughts are appreciated. I would just point out that the cesspools, the entire issue of sanitation and public health is really where this originates. The EPA banned large capacity cesspools, which is essentially any cesspool that's more than just a residential home. So that would be businesses, parks, commercial establishments, and stuff like that. There used to be cesspools all over the place. So those were banned in 2000, and they were to be eliminated by 2005, I believe, or it might have been 2012. And so that's nationwide. So there are no more large capacity cesspools. Every once in a while, a couple times a year, you read about one that's been discovered by the Department of Health somewhere in Hawaii, and some agency, could be DOE, could be a commercial business, gets a very large fine because they still have a large capacity cesspool, in many cases that they didn't even know about, right? But they're still gonna get a big fine and they have to upgrade. So it's not just random that cesspools are banned both nationally and then in Hawaii very recently. So we do have more cesspools than any other state on a per capita basis. It is an unsanitary method of wastewater treatment and disposal. So I want to make sure that that's clear. It is a public health interest, not just a whim that this should be banned.
Thank you. We'll have Councilmember Wire and then Councilmember DeSantis Tam.
Okay, mahalo, Chair, and thank you for entertaining. I know I'm not on the committee, but appreciate the participation, and I appreciate that point, Director. So I'm just curious your thoughts on the whole issue. Would you consider it a city issue if we're talking about? Of course, we're complying with the state law, but it is managing our waste, right?
Yep.
And the reason I ask is because I know when you talk to state folks, even some of our federal delegation, automatically it's, oh, that's a county thing, figuring out the compliance and then helping people transition. I mean, do you have any further thoughts on that, or is that just a straight yes?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So actually, right now, it's a private homeowner issue. So the city actually doesn't have any actual responsibility for the cesspool conversion or their elimination or anything like that. But in terms of, so we were just looking at it in terms of, these studies have been done before the cesspool ban. So as part of normal part of what we call facility planning for each of our wastewater basins, looking at the sewer system and the unsewered areas that are adjacent is always part of that process. In addition to looking at what future flows would be, additional development within the sewered area and unsewered area, what's happening with population, and doing long-range planning for what facilities that we need. So it's just kind of part of that process. That process wasn't initiated in response to something, a cesspool ban by the state, for example, including this project. This project existed, was studied before that.
Okay, I appreciate that. So any, for example, any Clean Water Act violations, those would all fall on an individual homeowner. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, correct. So if there was a spill, an overflow or a spill or something like that, that would be the property owner's responsibility if it was related to an on-site system. And so that is regulated and the purview of the State Department of Health. Whereas the sewered system, all of our infrastructure that belongs to the city, of course, is on us and all of our NPDES permits.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any city facilities that are serviced by cesspools?
As far as we know, no.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, every once in a while, a cesspool is found somewhere that folks that we didn't know about. But I believe, as far as we know, there aren't any in any city facilities. They've been upgraded.
Okay. Mahalo. Thank you, Director Babcock. We will now, unless there's anyone else here in the chamber who would like to testify on this measure, we'll now go to remote testimony. Is there anyone Clerk, is there anyone who is registered or not registered to testify remotely on this item?
We have no registered chair, but I see Angela Young.
Aloha, Angela. If you could unmute your.
Okay, can I talk?
Angela.
Thank you, Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young testifying in support, or no, wait. I wish to comment. Okay, I'm commenting. I'm wishing to comment. So I clean up at the EVA channel, although I'm not a resident from there. I just want to talk about the new sanitary systems and the solution-driven discussion from today. So there was expressed concerns about the extra cost, $1 million for the treatment plan. However, it's an extra burden for the community because the water is not dirty and they don't need it. However, EPA may be ordering it, and there's already a law which orders these things to be done, right? So when Surfrider addressed this issue about cesspools, it proposed a working group. The working group consisted of a comprehensive plan for the conversion of all cesspools by 2050. And it became an act. It was a Senate bill. It was proposed as a Senate bill for a working group, 2567. And it became an act 132. And then the working group began in the fall. So usually the agencies involved would be EPA, which is a federal agency, but you can request a federal agency within a resolution or a bill to work with the state and
Angela,
county agency.
if you could wrap up your testimony, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and I think Surfrider also got DOH to provide testing kits, because DOH manages the water quality for the testing kits.
Thank you, Angela.
Yeah.
Hello. Members, if we have any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, at this point, we will close testimony both remotely and in person. And members, we are in discussion. Yes, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. So my recommendation is still that we should hold this. And since the time from the full council to now, Councilmember Toba and I have not had a chance to go meet with the community. I wasn't aware of the 976 number, but at least we know that's the number now. I think the 4 reasons why I would say it'd be prudent for us to talk to community members ahead of time of this study is because of the financial burden. I think being transparent with the community from day one always goes over better. Always goes over better. Secondly, is that I think if I could work with the department on this CPACE grant, like I really think that we would financially be able to offer a better solution, but we would have to work out those pieces because there's a small piece of legislation we'd have to pass here in order to access it. Thirdly, I think there may be people that are willing, who knows, if we have an outreach meeting, maybe 400 of the 976 are like, yes, I don't know, we don't know, because until we actually meet with them and figure out what the situation is, we won't know. And I think fourthly is even just the educational points that Director brought to us today, I think they would really appreciate that, to just hear, why cesspools are being discouraged, what could benefit us from doing this versus a septic tank conversion, and kind of just let the community take it in, because I think we have the time to work with them on it and not against them on it. And, respectfully, if you're willing, I would love for it to be in the Public Infrastructure Committee so I can work with DFM and ENV and possibly build a loan structure that I think would advantage the city for years to come. Selfishly, more than just Eva Beach, I have handfuls of constituents that are having this issue, but they're not going to be offered this because the cesspool conversions we have in Waianae are just all over the valley. So I wanted to see if we can't build in something that maybe ENV can unilaterally offer to everybody so that these conversations become easier for us to have with community members, to offer them the tools that we have that can help them to get into a better health situation with their cesspools. So those are my respectful asks, Chair, and I'll turn the time to Councilmember Toba.
No, I second what Councilmember Tupola said. We hear the concerns. I mean, we have our senator from EVA who is willing, from what we're hearing, ready to, bring it in front of the Senate. So I think, going back to our communities and really educating them like what Councilmember Tupola said, I think it's the right way to go. And possibly even if we can move it to Pitt, that way we can try to find solutions in trying to getting finance if it's going to be, shoved down our throats. So.
Mahalo, Council Members Tupola and Talba. Members, any other discussion at this time? Okay. I want to thank Director Babcock coming again and presenting your explanation of this project. And I want to thank the members who have attended today, Senator Favela as well. And just to answer your question, Senator, we got elected at the same time in 2018, so I wasn't there either. Cannot blame me. But I want to go back to the education part of this. I really thank those who have come today and expressed the concerns of the community. I think there is value in having more explanation to the community. I learned a lot even today. Every time Director Babcock comes in front of us, I learned the importance of it. I hope that you guys can go back and express to your communities that this is not something that we are trying to shove down upon them, that this is not something that we even feel. I think from what I'm gathering, this is something that we're trying to help the community with, because in the event where this isn't done, and it is a mandate from the state, that they will have to do it, and it's going to be more expensive if the responsibility is solely on them. So that being said, I will at this time, the chair recommends that that action of Resolution 23-165 be postponed. I want to encourage you guys to really go back to the communities, work with Director Babcock, and get this information out to them, because we want them to be as educated as possible. And in the future, with any other future projects, I think that's the best route, to have that process before the communities, and that way we are not going to please everybody, we know that in our positions, but we can educate them the best as possible. So I will postpone this to a date and time to be determined by the committee chair. Any objections, any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Mahalo again to Director Babcock and his team. I want to thank those of you who are here for item number 2. I know that you're waiting patiently, and we have an addendum added on. So item number 3 will be taken up at this time. As I mentioned earlier, I'm taking up item number 3, which was posted on the agenda addendum before item number 2, Resolution 23-194. The Honolulu City Council stands in solidarity with the County of Maui and the people of the Valley Isle in its commitment to aiding in Maui's recovery, and urges the city administration to join the council in supporting Maui and its residents through whatever means possible. And I know Chair Waters was here and he had wanted to explain this measure. So if he comes in, I will defer to him. But at this time, I'd like to welcome Managing Director Michael Formby. If you could come and just have anything to say about the resolution.
Sure, thank you, Chair Okimoto, Vice Chair Toba, and committee members, Mike Formby, Managing Director. So I just wanted to come today and thank the council for the resolution and let you know that the administration supports the intent, and I believe by our actions has indicated that we do fully support Maui and Align. We've had resources over there. We have resources there as we speak, and we're willing to do whatever we can to help. So I know you've got an informational briefing following this, but we're in full alignment with the council, so thank you for the reso.
Mahalo, Director Formby. Members, any questions for Director Formby, Managing Director? No. Mahalo. So we'll now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerk, are there any registered or unregistered testifiers in person on this measure?
Yes, Chair, we have Senator Favela.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Senator Favela. If you could come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Kurt Favela, Ever Beach resident. Good thing this came after so we can show some love around here. I'm in strong support of the resolution 23-194, standing in solidarity with the families in Maui. The event on August 8 will forever remain in our hearts and our minds. I would also like to thank the community leaders and volunteers and nonprofits for their quick response and efforts in highlighting the abilities of Hawaii's people to come together during a time of hardship. We also recently established a storage warehouse in Kaka'ako. The management and influx of donations goods to this warehouse is streamlining the process and delivery to the essentials and supplies for our family in Maui. I would continue to support and all counties level of in the time of the need of the people up there. I cannot emphasize on how important the solidarity. When you use that word, people don't realize how strong that meaning is. So I thank the council for taking this up, and I appreciate you guys. Take care, God bless, and aloha.
Mahalo, Senator Favela. Clerk, is there anyone else who would like to testify in person?
Chair, I see no one else.
So we'll now go to remote testimony. Clerk, are there any registered or unregistered testifiers remotely?
Chair, no registered, but I see Angela Young has her hand up.
Aloha, Angela. If you could come to your screen, unmute yourself, and proceed with your testimony by stating your name for the record first.
I am unmuted. It's a miracle. Okay, so Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES. So it's so important to not have mix up in instructions when the emergency team needs to operate. And while I'm just one voice in Hawaii, I'd like to exercise my right to raise up this concern. We saw responses from all across the state of people trying to help. In the news, a man talked about how there were family members huddled together during the fire, like a teen huddle, and they were incinerated. There were a few stories about puppies. A 15-year-old was hugging its puppy when they got incinerated. And then a 50-year-old was hugging a puppy and they were incinerated. It's so important to set the parameters of the law to guide enforcement for the emergency response team, and in order to protect the people of the community.
Mahalo, Angela. Thank you for your testimony. Members, do we have any questions for the testifiers? Okay. If not, we will go into discussion. I'd like to welcome Council Chair Waters, and at this time, I would like to turn the discussion, start with you, if that's okay, since this measure was from you. You were the introducer of this measure.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, I introduced this just as an official recognition of our support, and we intend to deliver this to Maui. But all of us individually, I think, have done everything that we can, whether it's donating money, food, clothing, shelter. And I do want to just take the opportunity to thank the mayor, Department of Facility Maintenance, who got us 2 huge flatbed trucks. And we all got together and donated. The Honolulu downstairs was full of food and clothing, and working with Corporation Council as well, getting donations, and staff. We all spent a few days, 2 days, and filled up 1 dump truck and 2 huge flatbed trucks and delivered it to the pier where ILWU took it, wrapped it on pallets and sent it out on a barge. And it was pretty incredible how we all came together and continue to do so. But again, this is just a formal recognition that our county stands with our sister county. And thank you so much for having a hearing on this.
Mahalo, Chair. Members, any other discussion? Yes, Councilmember Tupola.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Chief Logan. He's sitting here. I definitely appreciate the fact that HPD sent over 6 peer support for scene management. They sent over, 6 peer support for Maui first responders and 6 investigators for scene management. I personally really appreciate that. I feel like when I was there, I mean, definitely all the first responders are tapped out. Many of them have lost their homes. They've been working without sleep. You know, any other things that we might not be using that's in storage for Honu. I mean, there's just so many people displaced. So just thank you, Chief Logan. Appreciate you. Thank you to the fire chief. I know they immediately started to deploy people to help them. I mean, I can't even imagine. I actually talked to one of the firefighters the day after because we were getting some people help, and 2 trucks burnt. I mean, he was so distraught. I mean, he was trying to be like helpful, but he was also so tired, you know, and trying to be mindful that the community was so angry at the same time. And the lady who talked to me and him, she was just going off on him, but really he was trying his best. So I just appreciate it. Chief Ha'o, Chief Logan, you guys know what it's like to go through that, and thank you for responding to them like that. I know they really, really, really appreciated it. Thank you, Chair.
Mahalo, Councilmember Tupola. Members, any other discussion? I want to mahalo and echo the remarks that were made by Council Chair Waters and Councilmember Tupola. And I want to thank the Ohana here in this building, because in a short period of time, we were able to really rally together. I want to thank, those of us whose offices kind of gathered together too. I know all of us, this is Hawaii, so we all have Ohana. I mean, we all have family on Maui. We have connections to family or loved ones in the departments in every way. So I know that this has really hit home for a lot of us because we're all connected that way. So I want to thank you again, Chair Waters, for taking the time and putting this measure before us as a council. Thank you. Okay. That being said, and no other testifiers, no other discussion, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-194 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. So we are nearing the committee time for the next committee hearing, which is the PIT, Public Infrastructure and Technology. And I've spoken with Committee Chair Tupola. If members want to continue to finish and you're willing to push back your committee hearing, if not, then we can recess this and.
Oh no, this is fine. I read the presentation. Looks like it's all about fires in Waianae, so definitely we're willing to hear about it. And our committee starts at 2:30. I only have a few things, so I mean, I'm guessing we might have to just postpone maybe 30 minutes, but up to you.
Yeah, we'll work towards that if that's okay. Thank you, Committee Chair Tupola. So with that being said, we will continue with the Public Safety Committee. And for those in the audience who are here for the 2:30 Committee on Public Infrastructure and Technology, we apologize for the delay. The Committee on Public Safety is still in session and we'll be wrapping up hopefully shortly. The Public Infrastructure and Technology Committee meeting will begin at we're guessing about 3 o'clock. Hopefully we can be done with that 30-minute gap. Mahalo for your patience and understanding. And I want to again mahalo those of you who have come. I know that all of you are very important people in our communities and you have a lot of work to do. So I really want to thank you. On a short notice, I came out and requested to have a lot of you come here today. So members, our last item on the agenda is item number 2, an update on Oahu's emergency preparedness by various city departments. And I have invited several departments to join us today to provide us with insight and information on this very important and critical issue. From the Department of Emergency Management, we have Director Hirokazu Toya. From the Police Department, we have Chief Arthur Logan. From the Honolulu Fire Department, we have Chief Sheldon Kalani Ha'o. And from the Honolulu Emergency Services Department, Dr. James Ireland, who is the director, as well as the manager and chief engineer of the Board of Water Supply, Engineer Ernest Lau. I wanted to, before we turn it over to Director Toya, thank you for being so patient with us. I want to again mahalo all of you. You guys can sense the love and appreciation we have for you, especially for agreeing to be with us today for this briefing, knowing how busy you are with the recent disaster on Maui on top of everything that you deal with here. Before we begin, I wanted to say a few things about today's briefing. First and foremost, members, this briefing is about Oahu and our emergency preparedness plan. We are not here to evaluate what occurred on Maui, and we are not here to make comparisons. My hope from this briefing and potential future briefings is to obtain a comprehensive overview of the city's emergency preparedness to various disasters and how we as a council can best assist emergency responders. With that being said, if I may humbly ask the members to please keep all your questions and comments pertinent to Oahu emergency responses only, and if you could write them down, we are going to take the questions at the end of the discussion. That's okay with everybody. And so now I want to turn the time over to Director Toya, who is going to start this, and he will actually pass the baton on to the following department heads, and we'll go from there. Mahalo, Director Toya.
Mahalo. Thank you, Committee Chair Okimoto, Vice Chair, Council members, Council Chair. Hiro Toya, Director for the Department of Emergency Management. So we are humble public servants of the City and County of Honolulu. And while our responsibilities here, it's a tremendous responsibility for protecting the health and safety of the people of Oahu. We too grieve with the people of Maui, and we stand in solidarity with our colleagues on Maui, and we have been assisting them, and we will continue to do so as long as we are needed. So we definitely have a lot to learn from this incident, and we will do so. This is in our nature of our work, that we learn from incidents and make improvements, and we'll do so in the coming weeks and months. And so I do appreciate this opportunity to speak in front of this committee and the council in a public forum about the work that we do here in terms of preparing for, responding to, and recovering from large-scale emergencies. So in addition to the speakers that you listed, we also do have Deputy Director Sumada from the Department of Planning and Permitting, in case there are any questions related to the design of communities, ingress, egress, building codes, or other related topics, if there are any questions or discussions related to that. But I do want to point out that emergency management, as we always say, takes the whole community, and it is also the whole of government as well. So every city department has a role in emergency preparedness and response for us. So with that, if I may, I will start with discussing the general structure of emergency management here. And we'll talk about the Emergency Operations Center a little bit. And I'll close out by discussing some of our alert and warning systems, including the cell phone alerts and our siren system. And I do appreciate the allowing for the structure to have the questions at the end. I hope that our presentations will complement each other and provide a holistic picture of how we operate here. So first off, for my department, emergency management, we are a small department. We only have 15 and a half full-time equivalents. But our role is really as the convener and coordinator of resources. So we're really not the primary owner of emergency response resources. But our role is to work together with everybody to come up with the plans. And when emergencies happen, we convene everybody together so we can have a collective and coordinated response. And so our structure is defined by state law, Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 127A. And each county has an equivalent agency like ours in emergency management. But each mayor is ultimately responsible for emergency management for his or her respective county. At the state level, of course, the governor is ultimately responsible for emergency management functions. And he has the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency at the state level to perform the kind of roles that we perform for the city. And of course, at the federal level, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, plays a similar role for the president. And so the federal level is defined by the Stafford Act. So the work that we do as emergency management, of course, a lot of it is really in the blue sky days when there's nothing happening. Our work is in preparedness, working together to develop plans, doing training, doing exercises. And of course, we deal with, fortunately, rather rare events, things that we don't deal with all the time. So it means that we have to have specialized training and exercises for these things. So these are activities that we regularly engage not only the first responders behind me here, but also with all the other city departments as well. And in recent years, we've really stepped up our efforts to work with community organizations and nonprofits. So we now have formalized agreements with Hawaii Food Bank, for instance, and also Partners in Care, so that we can work with different communities and just have a network of networks so that we can better leverage the resources in the community. And then when emergencies do happen, then we have a process in which we activate the city's Emergency Operations Center. So if you hear EOC, that's the central coordination point for the jurisdiction in the event of large-scale emergencies. We do play a role in the longer-term recovery, but this actually starts transitioning to different departments. Like when it becomes to discussions on reconstruction, of course, DPP and planning and permitting, other agencies will be heavily involved in those processes. So just talking a little bit more about the acute emergency phase. So of course, our first responders are constantly responding to 911 calls, and vast majority of those they're able to handle with a single department resource or a couple of departments. Maybe it's police, fire, EMS working together in the field. And these don't necessarily require the activation of the emergency management system. They do this day in and day out. But there are rare instances where incidents sort of exceed the capabilities of what can be coordinated in the field. and requires further non-routine coordination. So if we need to set up shelters or if we're doing mass evacuations, these are things that need to be handled not only at the field level, but also at a different level, and that's where the EOC comes into play. So we do have triggers built in. As I mentioned, I have a rather small department, and our regular hours are just regular city office hours, 7:45 to 4:30. But we have ways in which to activate the Emergency Operations Center if needed. And so the first responders have certain triggers built into their protocols to notify us. When incidents escalate to a certain level, they would notify us so that we know something's happening that requires our attention. There are other instances in which we activate the emergency management system. So if we know a hurricane's coming, for instance, those aren't really 911 calls, responders in the field generating those requirements. We know it's coming, so we'll convene the city team and all of our partners so that we can respond effectively to that large-scale emergency. And so as an incident progresses and additional requirements are there that it exceeds the capabilities for the city and county of Honolulu, or we need additional resources, then we can escalate those to the state level. So for instance, we need National Guard assistance in a mission. That's a state resource that has to go through the state emergency management system in order to activate that. And then of course, for federal resources, we go through the state's emergency management system to access federal resources. So I'm not the one calling FEMA and say, please help us. They are responding to official requests from the state. So it's really important that we're well coordinated with each other, and so that we have efficient and effective use of resources. And from the city's perspective, speaking with a single voice to the state so that the state knows, yep, these are credible requests coming from the city that we need to respond to. And so the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, is our central coordination point, but there's different levels of personnel in the emergency management system. So for instance, the mayor would be part of what we call the executive policy group. And so he's operating at the top level, providing policy guidance and the direction for the response. And then we're coordinating at the operational level in the EOC and basically developing some of the major strategies behind our response. And first responders will continue to be out in the field doing first responder work. And our role isn't to direct how they do that tactically. So we're not telling the fire department which direction to pull the hose for a fire. That's really up to them to figure out how to best deal tactically in that situation. So I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but those are the general levels in which we operate. And so this is always a scalable response for us. So it doesn't mean that every time there's an emergency, we activate the full emergency management system. We only bring in the resources that are needed for that particular instance. So, if we're talking about hurricanes, then that's all hands on deck. But if it's a small scale flash flood, that could be limited to first responders, DFM, state DOT highways, and a couple of other partners. So I'll end with discussing a little bit about our alert and warning mechanism. So this is one of the critical functions that emergency management performs. So on a day-to-day and smaller scale emergencies, if there's a need to notify the public, then we use our opt-in notification system called H&L Info. So I hope all of you have subscribed to that. There's a mobile application for that as well as cell phone alerts. So that's being used by not only DEM, but by the Honolulu Police Department and a few other departments. When there's something happening, it doesn't escalate to the level of notifying every single person, but it really does warrant some attention, so we want to push that information out. If there is a need, we would activate other tools that we have in our toolbox for alert and warning. And sometimes that need is based on information provided to us by the National Weather Service or by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. So for instance, if a tsunami is coming, then we have protocols to activate the sirens and also to activate the wireless emergency alert and the EAS system. So the wireless emergency alert is the cell phone alert that is built into every smartphone these days. And it's an opt-out system. So if you don't want to receive, you can turn it off, but by default, it's turned on. And these alerts can be geo-targeted. So depending on where the warning area is, we can target the cell phone alerts to those areas. And it's not pinpoint accuracy, but it's really based on the cell tower coverage and where those areas are. And then accompanying that is the emergency alert system. This is the crawler on the TV as well as radio. that can go out at the same time as these alerts. So as far as the sirens go, we really do this in a coordinated fashion. We want to ensure that additional alerts are going out concurrently with the sirens, because for us, the sirens mean attention and alert, turn on the TV, turn on the radio, look at your phone, there's something happening, and look for further instructions. And so we really got to make sure that whenever we activate the sirens, that those other methods of alert and warning are happening concurrently. So the sirens can be activated by the Department of Emergency Management, and as a backup, we count on the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency and the state warning point. And really, for most instances, this is going to be case by case. We need to determine what the need is in terms of alert and warning, what the geographic area is, and the timing of the event that's happening. So if it's not driven by a warning from the National Weather Service or the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, we would have to count on information coming from the field from the first responders indicating certain areas may need to be alerted for whatever the situation might be. So concurrently with that, the first responders will be, if there's an evacuation need, for instance, they'll be out in the field either going door to door or using their PA systems and directing people to evacuate. And so if the need for that type of notification goes beyond what they can do out in the field. And this happens with some regularity. We do unfortunately have fires and other emergencies in which small groups of populations need to be evacuated. If the incident exceeds the ability for the first responders to do that in the field, and there's a greater need to have to bring in the bigger tools like the sirens and the cell phone alerts, then we will coordinate with the first responders in the EOC. So there's different ways in which this could happen. As I mentioned earlier, we're not 24/7, so it's possible that the EOC is not activated when that requirement is generated. We do have mechanisms in place to be able to do that remotely should the need be there, and we do have backups at the state warning point, which is 24/7. It really ultimately, for large-scale evacuations, we definitely need coordination with the first responders, have good comprehensive information about what the affected area is, and so that we can translate that into the alert and warning methods that we have available to us from the EOC. Okay. So with that, we'll switch gears here, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Kalani Howell from the Honolulu Fire Department.
Mahalo, Director Toya.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chair Okimoto, Vice Chair Toba, council members. I'm glad to be here today. Thank you for this opportunity to allow all of the public safety partners to come up and just share what we do and maybe address some of the concerns that the public may have. I know we've been inundated with calls because of the fears of what happened in the tragedy in Maui. So thanks for this opportunity. I wanted to provide a PowerPoint. So if we can share our screen, please.
Chief Ha'o, maybe as they're setting that up, since I think most of the members have the presentation, if you could just begin, and then we'll get that on the screen as soon as possible.
Okay.
That's okay.
Well, I just wanted to start by just outlining as what our role is as stated in the city charter. We're an all hazards department, and we provide emergency and non-emergency services. So for non-emergency services, it's more of a prevention, education, inspection, investigations, building plan review, and in all hazards response, an emergency role is medical, rescue, hazmat, and fire suppression, which includes structural and wildland incidents. And for the purpose of today, because of the tragedies in Maui, we just wanted to share what we're doing in a wildland response. And basically, our role is to keep the community safe in all of those areas. Like I said, all hazards. But how we do it is through prevention, preparedness, and our effective emergency response. I'll be covering those areas today. From a prevention standpoint, a lot of public education, community outreach, working with the neighborhood boards, providing public service announcements. So as far as outreach, our wildland group is actually working with students in Nanakuli and Waianae in their media group so we can educate the students. Working with the neighborhood board, recently we provided them a fire guide with one of our partners, the Hawaii Wildlife Management Organization. It's kind of like a firefighter safety guide, what we provide for the children, but it's more focused on wildland response. And we do public service announcements. Chief, can you bring up our website? We just updated our website just to get this information out to the public. It's that guide that you folks have also about how the community can actually access this information and make their homes a safer place in case of any type of wildland incidents. And we also run public service announcements at the movie theaters, and it's again on our website about wildland safety. And we actually set out our PSAs a couple of months ago before the wildland season starts. I mean, Hawaii, our climate is as such where there's no real defined period as wildland, but it does uptick in the summer months. So this educational information is put out sometime in the spring. Next slide. We just wanted to provide this pictorial. It's in the guide. Again, this is a perfect opportunity for us to educate the public on what they can do immediately to protect their homes. And this is a pictorial from an NFPA, excuse me. And it just shows those perimeters. The three main points of ignition during wildfire is with embers. Second is with radiation, and then direct flame impingement. So one of the best things that people can do is clear their home within 5 feet, remove all combustible items. If and when embers, again, is the number one source, if you clear your area immediately around your home, you help create a defensible space. That's the definition that we use. In the next slide, this is an example of what a defensible space can do for you. Normally, you try and clear out this 0 to 30 feet, any kind of vegetation around your home also, to extend the zone from 0 to 5 out to 30. And if you can see, there's a before and after picture of a defensible space that was maintained. And when the fire came through, you kind of help protect the home by keeping the flames away from the structure. So again, I mentioned the 3 phases is prevention, preparedness. Again, this is the second phase. We do a lot of pre-planning. Just as Director Toya stated, is when the incidents are not happening, is when a lot of the work is being done. Our personnel go out on a daily basis and inspect and do pre-planning of, communities, wildland. We have different tools at our disposal. So on all of our apparatuses, we have our mobile data terminals that connects to what we call our codes system that has a lot of information in our pre-plans. So as our responders are going to the incidents, they can actually pull up those pre-plans that were generated by our personnel to give them, the target hazards, the risk involved, strategies, tactics on what we can do to help mitigate the incident safely. We just recently published our Wildland Urban Interface SOG, so it provides more guidance to our personnel. We utilize our drone, our unmanned aerial systems, and later on in this presentation, I'll have Chief Uchimura run through kind of showing you how the tools work and how our members can use that information to enhance their response. Again, as Director Toyo stated, it takes a community and a partnership with all departments and agencies. So one of the main partners that we have is the HWMO, Hawaii Wildland Management Organization, and they generated that guide that our website directs you to. Also, Firewise community, and again, all of the people sitting behind us to keep our community safe. And finally, to keep our community safe is through effective emergency response. Number one issue that we have with wildland response is access. So a lot of the areas that we have, if the weather conditions are right, we can utilize our helicopter. Our helicopter program, we just recently purchased that we're waiting for delivery of our twin engine helicopter. And what it'll actually do is enhance our capabilities. Currently, our single engine aircraft can, we have a fire bucket that we can drop water on in remote areas. Has a capacity of about 100 gallons. With the twin engine helicopter, it will triple that capability. We have enough pilots on island to, if we needed to, we can put 3 aircraft in the air. And so we have enough assets, and I'm very proud of our aircraft program in being able to, at least provide that service. Access, again, we have utility vehicles, so we can insert equipment and personnel into the remote areas. We just recently purchased another UTV to bring us up to 4. And again, we're just finding different ways to enhance our capabilities. We recently had our members of our wildland group be certified in sling loading, so to work in conjunction with our aircraft pilots, that they can secure and properly, take equipment and supplies into the area so they can work remotely, creating like these, what we call buoy walls. It's like a water tank that the aircraft can drop water in, and our personnel can utilize portable pumps and to create their own water source if needed. And also, the Honolulu Fire Department, all of our engines that we have is CAFs and has all Class A solution, and that's primarily, it's a capability that we're proud that we have. So I'll turn it over to our Assistant Chief, Craig Uchimura, and he spent a lot of time, in fact, almost his entire career on the west side. So he's very knowledgeable and has a lot of experience. He is currently our Assistant Chief of our support services and in the prevention branch, but he brings a lot of experience, and he was actually at this incidents that we have on this presentation. So I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Committee Chair Okimoto, Vice Chair Tolba, committee members. Craig Uchimura, Assistant Chief, Honolulu Fire Department. So I'm just going to quickly review three incidents that we had. 2 of the 3, I was the initial incident commander for. This first one, I was not, but this one was in 2014, over 1,000 acres burned up in Makakilo. So you can see we also utilized the aid of HPD's helicopter to assist us with water drops for that, along with other resources, federal resources, state resources. No structures were lost, thankfully, on this one. We've had things in place prior to that incident, but to expound on what Chief Howell was talking about with our drone program, on this map, you can see all these green icons. These green icons are 360-degree photographs that we can access on our computer terminals from the truck, as well as from the fire station. And on each icon, when you click on it, up in that same Makakilo area, you can kind of move it around, rotate it, but it also shows you street names, those little dots where hydrants are. It gives you a very good overview of how we can access different brush areas. Other things we have on the computer, pre-pan weather modeling. So you can see the red arrows, that's the prevailing trade wind. So it gives fire crews an idea of what the weather pattern is going to be like and the likely travel of fire, so that they can defend the neighborhood properly. Up in that same Makakilo area, they already had a pre-plan of Camp Timberline, Palihua Ridge. There's some small structures up there, as well as very critical communication infrastructure, radio towers for the federal government, our emergency responder radio repeaters, cell phone towers, power lines, and such. So they map all of that out. Moving forward a few years, this was when the 2 valleys, Makaha Valley and Waianae Valley, caught fire. So we responded up to the back of Keeley Drive for the initial fire. And about half an hour later, a little lower in the valley, another fire broke out. A little while later, another fire broke out, and there was no lightning happening that day. So we strongly suspect somebody was driving around starting these fires. About an hour later, the next valley over, Waianae Valley, started burning. So it turned into a multiple day incident. On this incident, we lost one. It was a temporary structure, like a shed. And again, the third incident, I don't know if you noticed, but all these incidents happened in August. So I think if we make it about 8 more days, we should be pretty good. But 5 years ago on this date, right at the tail end of Hurricane Lane, so there was very strong winds that were coming on the Waianae side of Kahe Power Plant. The brush fire started, and because the winds were so strong, it started on the west side of the power plant, and it ran Waianae towards Pilokahi Avenue across from Black Rock. Then the winds decided to turn, and it came back towards the power plant. Then it shifted again, went up the mountain. We made a defensive stand. Luckily, HECO had cut fire breaks, so it ran around us towards the Waimanalo Gulch, and we finally extinguished it when it was going towards Honokai Hale. So that was just an example of one of these wind-driven fires, not to the severity that we saw in Maui, but it did affect us that we had to kind of deploy all these resources. We had federal fire department that assisted us with this incident. And on this one, we were thankful because HECO had cut fire breaks prior to the incident, in preparation. So we were very thankful for that. And we've since had discussions with HECO and thanked them and realized that they do maintain all of their facilities as such. So we're very grateful for that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Al for any closing comments.
So again, as Director Toya said, it takes a lot of partnerships to keep our community safe. And so, I had an experience. I went to Maui and actually seen the devastation there. But one thing that is good is that we're creating these relationships and understanding what each other can do better from a federal level, state, and all the counties. So I think in the future to help the state become more resilient and be able to help take care of themselves. So that concludes our portion. I'll hand it over to Chief Logan of the Honolulu Police Department.
Mahalo, Chief Hao. Aloha HPD.
Aloha, Chair Okimoto, Vice Chair Toba, committee members. I'm Deputy Chief Keith Horikawa from HPD, and I'll be presenting for our department today. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today. So HPD's role in a catastrophic event, of course, will vary depending on the situation. And I'll kind of identify what some of those catastrophic events could be in our community here. So it could be an earthquake, hurricane, tsunamis, floods, high wind situations, large-scale explosions or fires, massive transportation collisions, terrorist events, civil disturbances, extensive utility failures, floods, and hazardous materials emergencies. Those are just a few examples of what could happen potentially in our city and county of Honolulu. So in general, basic police responsibilities at these catastrophic events could include, maintaining law and order, assisting in warning and evacuating persons in the affected area, with special awareness to the elderly, disabled persons, and children, protecting vital city facilities and resources, maintaining security of the evacuated areas, evacuation shelters, and staging areas, directing and controlling traffic flow in and around the disaster areas, providing helicopter support if needed, as we did with HFD in the past, ensuring all properly identified public and private emergency officials and volunteers are permitted access to and from the movement within the affected areas, and providing command and control for civil disturbances and terrorist events, and also assisting HFD in controlling the area around the fire. So those are just your typical responses that we as police officers can provide. To include, if needed, we do have on our emergency vehicles both our marked police cars as well as our subsidized vehicles. We have siren capabilities to include PA support as well. So we could, utilize our vehicles to provide emergency notifications at the scene. As far as preparedness, in addition to our initial recruit training that we provide on emergency responses to our recruits, we do have annual recall training every year for all of our sworn officers, where they go through about an hour of refresher training on emergency management response and preparedness. We also have a very extensive civil defense manual for HPD that identifies all the various types of hazards and what response considerations are, as well as the incident management process that's always being updated as necessary. And part of our preparedness for our patrol districts is for the patrol to also review and make their own subordinate plans for their particular district, to update them, provide in-service training to their watches, and also to identify hazards within their communities. We also had a discussion the other day with their patrol district as far as making sure that they reaffirm their contacts and relationships with the local first responder I guess agencies in their particular districts, whether that be fire department stations, EMS locations, even with the military as well. So big emphasis on that, and that's pretty much concludes my portion of what our capabilities are, pending any questions.
We'll take the questions at the end, if that's okay, Deputy Chief Harakawa.
Okay, I'll be followed by EMS.
Mahalo. Aloha, Director Ireland.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity, council members. Just a few notes before I start. I'm James Ireland, the Director of the Honolulu Emergency Services Department. I think, regarding this incident in Maui, one of our former employees at EMS, Tony Simpson, did pass away in the fire, and that was announced today in the Maui news. He was a current emergency medical technician with AMR and stationed on Lanai. So we have been touched by this, as well as really everybody else somehow in the state. One thing I can say about Honolulu and all the first responders here is that we all have a special bond with each other as agencies. In some jurisdictions across the country, you hear of rivalries and competition, and there's none of that here. I would do anything for the police and the fire, and they would do anything for us. And I think that makes us that much better. The other thing is, I think everybody here has this sense of responsibility to the community, because the community is our friends and family, and we're like a big, small town. And so I think at least for EMS and Ocean Safety, all of our team would do anything for this community. And when there is an emergency, when this happened in Maui, that next morning, Wednesday morning, we had volunteers calling me and calling the other chiefs, like, we'll go, just tell us when and how. And we did offer to go. And from the EMS standpoint, they didn't need our help, which in a way is good. But we were there ready to send ambulances and personnel, just like our police and fire sister agencies did. The other thing I just wanted to mention is, when the EOC is operational, we do have a representative there, either partial or full activations. One of our chiefs is actually in the EOC, shoulder to shoulder with police, the fire department, everyone else. And just a real world example in one of the recent activations within the last year or so is we had a flood advisory and we had a flood warning. And the road washed out at Waihole with the stream, which does from time to time. But at the same time, we had a landslide at Waimea Bay. And so we had no way, the road was basically cut off from Waimea Bay through Kahuku, Laie, all the way to, almost Ka'alu'u. So, we had no way to get EMS emergency ambulance patients out of that part of the island. And so, in the EOC, we were able to coordinate that, yes, they would go to Kahuku. Helicopters were grounded at the time, so we worked with DFM, our state agencies, as far as road crews and things, to decide how we were going to move patients. If it was be more expeditious to clear the road, at least a partial road at Waimea Bay, or if we bring 2 city buses or 2 ambulances on each side of the break and hand the patients over, if we would need a boat, that sort of thing. So working together, in the EOC and training regularly just makes us that much better to respond to the next emergency. And have these plans, and where someone's right next to you who might have the solution, rather having to make a call or find other people, especially at odd hours of the night. So I'm really appreciative of Director Toya and his team, and just the way they bring us together and to just do the best we can during these stressful situations. in EMS, we have 21 ambulances on island that work 24 hours a day. We have 42 lifeguard towers and 8 rescue jet skis that are during the daylight hours of the day, and that's kind of the normal operations. I think you saw just recently when there was a fire in West Oahu, some of our jet ski operators in Ocean Safety were able to ferry people from the fire area back to the parking lot at Yokohama Bay as part of a water evacuation to get people out. So we were involved in that. Depending on the disaster, though, Ocean Safety may be rendered less effective just because if it's a hurricane or a tsunami, obviously we're going to pull them all back off the beach. Last year we did a EMT class for 25 of our Ocean Safety lifeguards, and so they have now a higher level of medical training, and so that will help them not only in their daily job, but in the event of a disaster, we could call on them to help on the EMS or medical side if need be in a mass casualty incident. Just worth mentioning, I think the other things is we could potentially stand up 8 additional ambulances in addition to our 21 in the event of a mass casualty incident or disaster. We also have memorandums of understanding with the federal fire department. They have ambulances on Oahu, as well as American Medical Response, the private ambulance provider. The other thing is in a disaster situation, we would activate our CBRN command truck. CBRN is an acronym that stands for Chemical, Biological, Radiation, Nuclear, and Explosive, and that truck carries antidotes for nerve poisoning, anthrax attacks, chemical monitoring for bioterrorism, radiation detection equipment, as well as things like Narcan and extra medical supplies and communication equipment. So that command truck would be activated in a disaster. We also have 2 ambulance buses. These are ex-city buses that have been outfitted with stretchers and litters. They can each carry 18 patients who are flat and 6 kind of people who can sit in a chair, or 24 people who can just sit in a chair. We have 2 of those, but one is active at all times and ready to respond. We also have our core team, which deals with crisis outreach for the homeless, but because they have also emergency medical technicians, 2 nurses and a physician, will task them in a disaster with shelter medical care. So they will be able to attend to people's medical needs in a shelter. Because one of the things the hospitals have told us is if they are receiving a lot of patients in a community-wide disaster or medical emergency, if people have very minor injuries or just need medication refills, they would want them to avoid the ERs to not overwhelm the emergency rooms. Or maybe someone just is on CPAP or some kind of a breathing machine at home that needs power and some medical monitoring, but not the hospital. So we would have them in a designated shelter, and the core team would take care of that. Our department does have 5 physicians, including me, 2 in health services, myself, 1 in core, and then our medical director, Dr. Kovan. So all of us would be mobilized to help in caring for people in shelters if needed to offload the hospitals. Again, I'd just like to stress we work very well with our colleagues in the police department and fire department. I have full confidence in this team. And again, just really thinking about Maui every day and what they've gone through, praying for them. But I know, like Director Toya said, in any incident, whether it's here, Maui, the mainland, there are lessons learned, and we will be a better city for it when we learn what we can do to enhance our operations from what we've learned them. So thank you. Ernest Lau of the Board of Water Supply.
Mahalo, Director Ireland. And if I didn't mention, thank you, Chief Logan, for being here. I know you came from another appointment, so thank you for you and your department being here. I'd like to welcome Chief Lau for the Board of Water Supply. Or if you could push the button back on. Thank you.
Okay, that's better. Thank you. I always forget. Ernie Lau, Manager and Chief Engineer for the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Emergency response planning is really important for us. Every day we supply drinking water to 1 million people on the island of Oahu. And we really depend on electric power to do that. Our annual electricity bill is about $33 million last year to provide that power. We have systems all over the island. We are fortunate in certain areas we have water sources that don't depend on electricity, our tunnel sources up at higher elevations, including in the Waianae area. Back of Waianae Valley, there is some of those tunnel sources. But most of our water depends on pumping. So it takes electricity. So for us, being a critical infrastructure, we have these dependencies. So we've been working very hard to actually establish backup power capability, basically generators. And our generators are not what you go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy off the shelf there. The generators we need, because our pumps are large horsepower, they lift water many feet in the air to different reservoirs, between reservoirs, or from underground water aquifers. These are 500 kW or 1 megawatt generators, and right now we have about 13 of them. 2 more in purchase, so we'll end up in hopefully within a year to have 15 of these large generators to be able to pump water and move water around our system. Coordination with our fellow city agencies behind me under the leadership of Director Toya is very important, and we are part of that team and staying in constant communication. Wildland fires, I gotta say this. Climate change is bringing so many surprises to us. We don't know where that future will lead and what new challenge will arise because of climate change. Excessive heat, going from very wet to very dry conditions in very short periods of time, those are some new challenges. And for us, we realize that we need to really expand and actually develop wildland fire plans that are in close coordination to support the responders, the first responders that are out there putting their lives forward to protect people's property and their lives. So we stand ready to cooperate. I'd be glad to come back to brief you about our backup power, our emergency power plan for the Board of Water Supply. The incident that we worry most about is hurricanes. So anytime you want us back, please let me know. Thank you.
Mahalo, Chief Lau. Members, I know that we are nearing the 3 o'clock time, which is when I asked Committee Chair Topola for us to postpone your hearing. Are you okay if we continue on?
I need to get to a wildfire management meeting at 5 in Waianae, which takes me usually an hour and a half at this hour, and I have to pick up kids from school and get there. So I don't really know how much more time I can unless we cancel my committee.
Let me, I appreciate your patience, and I completely understand. Let me just, well, before we go into...
Chair, would you like to have us submit questions to you?
Sure.
Yeah. I was going to, I know that we have to take public testimony before we close this, but yes, Director Ireland.
I just wanted to say one quick thing. I apologize. I misspoke about Tony Simpson. He is still listed as missing.
Oh, okay.
And not confirmed dead. So I just wanted to clarify that. But again, we're just really touched and saddened by this situation for him and his family.
Thank you for clarifying. Dr. Ireland. Okay, members, so with respect to Councilmember Tupola's committee, and I know that we've gone past our time, and thank you again to those of you. Thank you so much for the department heads who came here today. I know that we have to take public testimony, and so maybe we can quickly do that. And at that point, members, for the discussion, what we can do is submit written questions to the respective department heads, and we can go from there. And if necessary, we'll have you guys come back again. But we knew that this was an important meeting, and appreciate you guys waiting and staying. So before we, and Council Chair Waters also wanted to apologize. He had to leave to take his daughter to college, and he wanted me to relay that message to you. But I will get the information to him, and we'll get our questions to you. Thank you. So before we go on with the rest of the meeting, like to Madam Clerk, has anyone registered in person or not registered and is in person here to testify on this info briefing?
Chair, we have none.
Mahalo. Is there anyone remotely who is registered or not registered who is here to testify?
Chair, no registered, but I see Angela Young.
Aloha, Angela Young. If you could unmute and state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, we have within your time limit.
Yes. I was like, how do I unmute it? And how do I mute it? I was trying to figure it out. Okay, so
Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of Volunteer Safety Coordinator from Kapalama Neighborhood Security Watch. We provide training because we get asked, how do we support the community in safety matters and emergency response? Although the work is just a small part, it's just a small part. I hope this can provide just a little insight from one perspective to alert the officials and the directors on how can the system be safeguarded and improved so that the laws and systems can be a little bit more sensitive to these things. I'll just point to a model legislation, although we're not talking about what happens at schools. It's a legislation about emergency response at DOE. So Senate Bill 830 created a pilot program at DOE schools, and the research of the bill found during an emergency, every minute matters. There is a gap between guidance provided to administer first aid and the training and preparedness of staff in the case of emergencies. The purpose of this act is to propose procedures to supplement current instructions by requiring each school's administration to appoint critical emergency response team members to create procedures to respond.
Aloha, mahalo, Angela. Thank you for your testimony. And I was just made aware we have one in-person testifier. Senator Favela, welcome back to the chamber.
Thank you. One of the questions, I don't know if they're here, the emergency prepare person. What I wanted to ask is the system that we have here similar to what Maui have? And then the other question is to the fire department. I know you guys are in every part of the community. You guys doing a great job. And I know you guys been getting calls, potential fires on the west side, where it's dry. But you know when you guys are in the community, whether you guys live or just work, you know when you guys see stuff that you guys always talk about, what is the component of making or fueling or causing on fire. So the question that I wanted to ask to you guys, I mean, I know you guys are very busy and you guys probably don't have time, but when you guys pass by like Verona Village or Kapolei Parkway and you guys see bushes that is 50 feet high, knowing that if it burns, it'll burn those houses down. And you guys know I'm concerned because we was talking about the fire, but if you guys can figure that out, if you guys do see it, if you guys can let us know, council members, or even me, to know that we can get the owners of the property, whether we need to get them to do it or not. But if you guys can help us out do that, because you guys are the eyes and ears of the safety of our community, and who can do it better than you guys?
Mahalo, Senator Favela. And in response to your question, and just because I really am grateful for Councilmember Tupola and being patient with us, but to respect her committee's time, I'm going to ask actually for the council members to email your questions to my office, and then we can kind of consolidate and filter it that way. And we'll include your question, Senator Favela, so that we can respect everyone's time again. And at this time, I know that we've gone past, and I want to allow the next committee chair her time, so we will take those questions. We will, I want to, again, mahalo you guys for being here. And just because I know that this is a public hearing, and so sometimes with the questions being filtered to us, the public may not feel that they were able to get the information out. So in the event, I may have you come back at some point to maybe answer those questions publicly, but we'll do our best to consolidate them and get them to you. And so that together, and thank you for working so nicely together. It's such a great thing to see you guys working as a team. Together we can get that information out to our community members. But with that being said, seeing no other testifiers, and we will save our member discussions through email. Members, if you could, again, email that to me at my office, and maybe we'll have it, today is Thursday, correct? If you could get it to my office by next Thursday, we'll give you a week to get that into me, and then we can work on getting that out to the department heads. That being said, mahalo everyone for your participation. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.